Hello everyone. It's your girl Lily back with another Sentro project. I made this beautiful long sleeve maxi dress on my Sentro. It took quite a long time, but I'm finally able to post the video and show you guys the project that I came up with. The dress also has two tie strings in the back as well as a scoop back out feature. So we're gonna get started and I'll show you how to get this done. Please also don't forget to subscribe and like, and of course leave me a comment. Let's get into it. So I got these yarns on Shein. The yarns are labeled as alpaca. I don't really know how true that is. I don't know whether they're authentic or synthetic. I'll have to go look at the purchase and let you guys know in the comment section. But I got this in a pack of, I believe, 12, and I was not sure what I wanted to do at first. I don't really know whether this yarn was going to be good. I noticed it was super lightweight. Initially, I fed it into my Sentro on the tightest feature there, and then I ended up deciding not to. It kept popping out because the yarn is so lightweight. So I ended up not going all the way around with keeping it at the first tightness on the Sentro. So the looseness of the dress I actually liked in the very end. So that's pretty much what I went with. So I'm currently working on my sleeve for the dress. The sleeve I did about 150 rows. That might seem like a lot. It really isn't. For a good rule of thumb, you would equate 5 rows as 1 inch. So then you will have about, let's see, I have to do the calculations. 30 inches down the length of your arms. So if you know the length of your arms, you would then measure it, and 5 rows will equate to 1 inch. So if your arm is, I guess, 20 inches, you'll multiply that by 5 and you'll get 100 rows on your Sentro. So that's a good rule of thumb should you decide to need the exact measurements to do your project. As far as clothing goes that you make on your Sentro, that's a good idea. So for me, I didn't really measure my arms. My arm isn't totally 30 inches. I don't know. I didn't measure it, but I just went with a good rule of thumb and said, okay, I want this to be super long, and so I went with the 30. All right, so we have 120 rows here. That's about 24 inches. My apologies, earlier I said 30. But I guess I stopped at 20. I may have stopped at 20 because the skein for my yarn must have ended. And so I kept thinking I did 30, but I did 120 rows for my arm sleeves. And now I'm just going to show you guys how I cast this off of my Sentro. I did not use scrap yarn for this. I thought the scrap yarn I had was way too heavy to pair with this really thin yarn. And so I did not want to compromise the yarn or have the heavier yarn rip it or burst it or whatever. So I decided to, take my time and use the casting off method with the needle. And this yarn does not roll significantly as the larger yarns do, or the heavier weight yarns do. This yarn does not roll as severely. And so for me, it was easier to do this method of casting off on the Sentro. So if you're using this yarn and you're not too confident, I would say maybe use a higher weight yarn. This would be like, I guess, 0 to 1 weight. Super fine in my opinion. And so I would recommend using weights of 3 or more if you're still kind of new to this. I think if you do have scrap yarn, make sure the weight is 2 or less. In my opinion, I just don't know what this yarn would look like, or if you'd have a hard time working with this yarn if you end up using a heavier weight as a scrap yarn. I typically have weight 4 yarns for almost everything that I do. This is my first time ever working with this yarn, so I can't really say exactly that the heavier weights would be a good scrap yarn to pair with this in order to get the project off the Sentro. So for now, this is the method that I have to cast off the yarn that I'm using. And so yeah, it's working well, as you can see, and we're just gonna keep doing this. All right, guys, don't panic. This is why I absolutely love this yarn so far. It came off and I was scared to death, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is no way this is gonna fit my arm. All you have to do, guys, is stretch that bad boy out. It curls just a little bit, as you see, but when you curl it out, it's not, you know, doing anything significant. But all you have to do is pull on that yarn. Don't do it aggressively, just pull it a little bit. Just pull it a little bit, tug at it, and then there you go. You have your entire arm sleeve of this yarn. Do not be scared of stretching your yarn if you need it to be a significant length. They bounce back, they do that, so do not be scared. Now that I have both my sleeves all stretched out and beautiful, I'm going to get started on my front panel for the body portion of the dress. All right, so I finished the front panel of my dress. Unfortunately, my camera died when I started it, and so it didn't get a lot of the footage or any footage at all. But I did 355 rows for the front of my dress. And now I'm just casting it off. I did have one drop stitch that I caught a little too late in the game, and so I just pieced it together with a pin there, and then we kept moving. Now I'm doing the back panel of my dress. The back panel, I did 145 rows. I believe usually you cut it in half and then add an extra 25 to 40 rows for the back if you decide that you want to do a back out dress like I'm doing here. So that's a good rule of thumb. If you know the length of your body, you do 5 rows per inch, and then you cut it in half and add an extra 20 to 40 rows to complete the back portion for a back out dress. I really wanted it to cover my bum and make sure it's just like falls literally on my lower back, and so I don't you know, get like a reveal back there. And that's kind of what I did here. So I'm just working on my back panel, and once that's done, I'm gonna start stitching this together. All right, so you'll see some stitches that are piecing the project together that's on the Sentro right now. That looks like they were all the way around. I did that intentionally. Normally, when you do panel mode projects, when you use heavier weight yarn, you'll notice that it gives significant amounts of curling. And this yarn does not curl like the heavier weight yarn does, but I still wanted to try out doing this with this weight yarn just to prevent it from curling. And as you can see when it's visible, that it doesn't curl at all. So this could be a cool idea for the heavier weight yarns if you want it to not curl while you're on panel mode, to probably waste about an inch worth of yarn every so often so that you can keep it from curling. I still haven't figured out how to stop curling on the Sentro with heavier weight yarns, but I'm probably going to try to check out some other videos and see how I can get that done. And then once I figure out how to do it, or I could just use the method that I came up with, either one. But yeah, I'm gonna check out some other people's, see what they're doing, and then try it out and let you guys know which option I think is best. But for right now, that's pretty much what I'm doing. Okay, so if you're a plus size girl or you just have thicker hips, this is a good idea for you guys. So on my smaller Addy, this is a 22 needle Addy Express, and it does smaller, I always default to the word Sentro, but smaller knitting machine options. So here I'm making a panel, 2 side panels for my hips. So my hips have a little bit more space in my project. I've made a lot of skirts, I've made a lot of dresses using my knitting machines, and I oftentimes realize I need more hip space. Like, everything is great as far as like my torso goes, but my hips need a little bit more space. So if you are anywhere above size 6 and up, I would suggest that you use the smaller 22 knitting machines to make yourself some side panels just to go alongside your legs to your hip area. This is a great idea for my project specifically, Lila, specifically because I'm making a lower back end, and so I'll be able to stitch it onto my back panel on both sides and then stitch it to my front panel. Again, my back panel is going to be half of my front panel, and my front panel was about 255 rows. So the back panel and the side panels are going to be about the same length, and I believe I said I left them off at 145 rows each. So you need 2 side panels the same length as your back panel to stitch them together so you have extra space for your thick hips. So this is what we have. We have our 2 shoulder sleeves, we have our 2 side panels, and then we have our 2 back and front panels. The front panel is, of course, longer than the back, and the back is going to start from the lower part of your back down to your ankles, or however long you wanted it to be. I put it on my mannequin here just to conceptualize the idea I had in mind, and of course it flows perfectly with what I had in mind, and all I have to do now is stitch these beautiful panels and tubes together to make my dress and just bring my idea to life. Alright, so here I'm gonna just show you a basic stitch that I was doing before. I thread my knitting needle with the alpaca yarn that I had, and all I'm doing is going back and forth. I do a couple back stitches every about 5 or so stitch, but I'm just going to be doing an in and out, going all the way up or down your project to close it up. The back stitches is simply because sometimes you might go in and out and you might not be able to see exactly where your project needle is going, and so you might not get the holes that are needed and you might be left with a gap. So I tend to do a back stitch just to loop that hole closed just in case, so that we don't have any slips. All right, after we are done stitching our project together, you should end up with this beautiful dress. I did go back into my Addy 22 to get 2 of the loops to close the back out because I did not like how it fell. I did 100 rows for each and then just stitched them together on the shoulders. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next project update.